I have always experienced the world through my palate. As the head sommelier for one of the city's most prestigious dining rooms, my life is a catalogue of sensory profiles. I can distinguish the slate-heavy soil of the Moselle Valley from the clay of Pomerol with a single inhale. I understand that wine, like love, is a living thing. It breathes, it evolves, and if it is mishandled, it turns to vinegar. I viewed my marriage to Isabelle as a Grand Cru rare, complex vintage that was supposed to deepen and improve with age. Isabelle was an event planner, a woman of effervescence and charm, the champagne to my Bordeaux. We had been married for 9 years. Our home was built on a foundation of shared tastes. We hosted dinner parties that were legendary, ballets of food and wine pairing that we orchestrated together. I believed we had a perfect finish. I didn't realize that while I was obsessing over the temperature of the cellar, the oxidation had already set in. The erosion of our bond was not a sudden spill. It was a slow evaporation. It started with her palate. Isabelle, who used to delight in the earthy complexity of a Barolo, began to ask for simple, overly sweet whites. She stopped lingering over dinner. She began to treat meals as fuel rather than rituals. She would come home late, smelling not of the office, but of a different kind of air, something charged and metallic. I dismissed it as fatigue. I told myself that her palate was just tired, that the stress of her busy season was dulling her senses. I was arrogant enough to believe that my expertise could decant the problem, that I could simply let our marriage breathe and it would open up again. The discovery happened in the sanctuary of my own basement. My personal cellar is a climate-controlled fortress, kept at a strict 55 degrees and 70% humidity. It is where I keep the investment bottles, the wines that mark the milestones of our life. It was a Friday evening. I was looking for a specific bottle to celebrate Isabelle's recent promotion in 1980 to Chateau Margaux we had bought on our honeymoon in France. It was the crown jewel of my collection, a bottle we had agreed to open only when we had truly made it. I walked to the French section, row 4, slot 12. The bottle was there. The label was pristine, the foil capsule intact. But as I reached for it, my hand brushed against the bottle next to it, a 2005 Pinot Noir that Isabelle had always favored. It felt wrong. The weight was off. A full bottle of wine has a specific heft, a density that I have memorized in my muscles over 20 years of service. This bottle felt light, not empty, but different. I pulled the Pinot Noir from the rack. I held it up to the dim cellar light. The fill level was correct, sitting right at the neck. The foil looked undisturbed, but when I ran my thumb over the capsule, I felt a tiny, almost microscopic puncture mark in the center. A needle hole. I froze. I knew this device. It was a Corvin, a system used to extract wine through the cork without pulling it, replacing the liquid with argon gas to preserve the rest. I own one. Of course, it was in my toolkit upstairs, but I hadn't used it on this bottle. I took the bottle to my tasting table. I cut the foil. The cork was there, stained red on the bottom. I used my corkscrew and pulled it. The sound was a dull thud, not the sharp pop of a vacuum seal breaking. I poured a splash into a tasting glass. The color was right, but the nose was wrong. Instead of cherries and damp earth, I smelled water and cheap ethanol. I tasted it. It wasn't Pinot Noir. It was colored water mixed with vodka and a splash of supermarket red blend. My heart hammered against my ribs. I turned back to the rack. I pulled the 1980 to Margaux, our honeymoon bottle, the symbol of our future. I didn't even need to open it. I could feel the temperature difference. The glass was colder than the liquid inside. I cut the foil. I pulled the cork. It was tea. Cold, stale black tea. I stood in the silence of my cellar, surrounded by 300 bottles, realizing that my sanctuary had been looted. She hadn't just drunk the wine. That would have been angering, but forgivable. No, she had drunk the wine, likely with someone else, and then she had gone to the trouble of refilling the bottles, recorking them, and replacing the foil to deceive me. She had created a counterfeit reality. She wanted me to believe the value was still there, while she siphoned off the soul of our marriage. I didn't storm upstairs. A sommelier does not lose his composure. I spent the next hour auditing the rack, 6 bottles, 6 of the finest vintages I owned, all consumed, all replaced with swill or water. The theft was intimate. It was specific. I went upstairs. Isabel was in the living room, scrolling through her phone. She looked up and smiled, asking if I had found a wine for dinner. I told her I had found something special, a blind tasting challenge. I went to the kitchen. I didn't decant the 1980 to Margot, which was filled with tea. Instead, I poured the fake Pinot Noir, the vodka and water mixture into 2 crystal glasses. I returned to the living room and handed her the glass. I sat opposite her. I told her that this was a wine that required focus. I told her it was a vintage that revealed the truth of the terroir. She took the glass. She swirled it, feigning the ritual she no longer respected. She didn't even look at the color. She lifted the glass to her lips. I watched her. I watched her throat work as she swallowed the foul, watered-down concoction. And then I watched her smile. She complimented the wine. She called it delicious, smooth, and earthy. The lie hung in the air, pungent and rotting. She hadn't even tasted it. She was so disconnected from me, so used to the deception, that she could drink colored water and tell me it was a Grand Cru because she thought that was the line I wanted to hear. I set my glass down on the coaster with a sharp click. I looked at her. I informed her that she was drinking vodka and tap water. The smile froze on her face. It didn't fade. It shattered. She looked at the glass, then at me. The realization hit her not that she had been caught drinking, but that she had been caught faking. I asked her who she drank the real 1980 to Margot with. I asked her if he appreciated the notes of violets and truffles, or if they had swigged it from the bottle like teenagers while laughing at the husband who was saving it for a future that didn't exist. She crumbled. She put the glass down, her hand shaking. She tried to blame the loneliness. She admitted there was a man, a client, someone who lived in the moment and didn't obsess over aging and preservation the way I did. She said they drank the bottles because she wanted to feel reckless. She refilled them because she didn't want to hurt me. I listened to her explanation. It had the structure of a cheap table wine, unbalanced, acidic, and leaving a bitter aftertaste. I realized that she wasn't the woman I married. The woman I married would never have desecrated the art we loved. This woman was a forgery, a counterfeit in a designer dress. The emotional impact was like a hangover that wouldn't lift. I felt physically ill. I couldn't look at my cellar. The collection I had spent a decade curating felt contaminated. I poured the tea-filled Margot down the kitchen sink, watching the pale brown liquid swirl away, taking the memory of our honeymoon with it. I felt foolish. I felt like a man who had bought a painting for millions only to find out it was a print. Isabel tried to salvage it. She offered to buy new bottles. She offered to go to counseling. She said we could restock. But I knew that you cannot uncork a betrayal. Once the oxygen gets in, the wine is dead. You cannot turn vinegar back into grapes. I made the decision the next morning. I packed my knives and my corkscrews. I left the furniture. I left the house. But I took the remaining wine, the real wine. I moved into a small apartment above the restaurant. It smells of garlic and rain, not the sterile perfection of my old cellar. But it is honest. It has been 8 months. I am rebuilding my collection, bottle by bottle. I have learned that taste is the only thing that doesn't lie. I have learned to trust my palate over my heart, and I learned that if you have to fake the taste to make the relationship palatable, it is time to pour it out. To anyone holding a glass, wondering why the wine suddenly tastes flat, wondering why the person across from them feels different, check the cork, check the seal. Do not drink the vinegar just to keep the peace. Life is too short to drink bad wine, and it is certainly too short to stay in a counterfeit marriage. I am Lucian. I am alone, but my glass is full of the truth, and that is a vintage worth savoring.